People don't realize how much money it takes to make music, so I thought I'd make a video about it as a completely independent artist. Because streaming has devalued music so much to the point where artists make 1/3 of a cent per stream. So you can't make money off of music anymore, but it still costs money to make music, and I feel like people don't realize that music is not just like a free thing. And we're not talking about AI because that sucks. So I'm going to take you through the costs that it takes to make music. So the number one cost would be like collaborators, would be like producers, mixing engineers, mastering engineers, all of those things. Now I do all of those things myself, so I don't have those costs, but most artists do have those costs. They have to pay writers, they have to pay producers, they have to pay a mixing engineer, they have to pay a mastering engineer, they have to pay a sound engineer, they have to pay studio technician, they have to pay all of these people. I don't have to pay those people because I do all those things myself, and it's one of the reasons why I learned how to do all of those things myself, so I don't have to pay those people, also because I wanted to. But that's the main cost for most artists in making music. Then studio time costs money, another cost that I don't have because I do all that stuff myself. Then another cost that you have is DSPs, which is a distribution service provider, which basically means you have to pay in order to get your music on streaming platforms like Spotify, Napster, what have you, because you can't just upload your music to Spotify. You have to pay somebody to put your music on Spotify because you can't do it yourself, because they've made it so that you can't do that as an artist. So that's another cost. Then you have to pay a PRO, which is a performing rights organisation, which basically administers your copyright for a certain type of copyright so that you get paid from it, even if it's like 1/3 of a cent. Otherwise you don't get that money. So you have to pay them. Then you have to pay a mechanical rights organisation, which does the same thing just for a different kind of copyright. And then you have to pay to protect your music or your copyright. You have to pay for that. Then you probably have to pay for other protection costs. Then you have to pay like general business overhead costs that every business has, even if you have no income. And that can be thousands of dollars that you just can't get around, like insurance and all that stuff. Because as soon as you put music online, then you have to register yourself as like business stuff and all that stuff. So you have costs, business costs that you can't get around and that you have to pay no matter if you don't have an income. So you have those costs. Then you have to pay for stuff like the artwork, and so most artists pay like a graphic designer, or they pay photographers and all of that stuff, so they have to pay for that. I do all that stuff myself, so I don't have to pay for that, also because I want to clarify. Then you have to a lot of the times people pay for marketing, because that's a whole topic of obviously like putting videos on social media, but a lot of people, they pay for like a marketing campaign, somebody who will structure that for you. A lot of the times you'll have to pay, if you want to perform somewhere, you'll have to pay for a booking agent. You'll have to pay why like 82% of independent artists can't afford a tour, because you have to pay to perform. It's all a little bit crazy, and people don't realize this. You have to pay in order to make music and to put out music and to perform somewhere. You have to pay to do those things. It's a very interesting business, especially in the public's perception, because people think all of that is free, and you make money when it's with streaming. You make 1/3 of a cent per stream. That's not even all streaming platforms. I made a video about how I got 200,000 streams, and it paid me like literally $1 from 200,000 streams. So you can't cover any cost of that. These are just like a couple costs off the top of my head. I'm sure there's more that I'm not thinking of at the moment, but I thought that would give you a little bit of industry insight from an independent artist.